There are hungers that make your stomach ache, and there are those that eat at your soul, the kind that turns your prayers into whispers of madness, the kind that drives you to walk where even ghosts refuse to go. That was the hunger that led me, barefoot and trembling, into the forbidden forest, a place where silence had teeth, and every shadow felt alive enough to watch you breathe. For 3 moons, our village had been dying. The river had dried into a trail of bones, and the sky had forgotten the mercy of clouds. The soil had turned to dust, our granaries hollow, and the laughter that once filled our huts had vanished with the crops. My mother's hands shook as she tried to crush the last handful of grain into porridge, but even hunger could no longer be tricked by hope. My brother, Tommy, lay on the mat beside the door, his ribs pressing through his skin, his breath thin and fragile. Every cough felt like a countdown, every sigh a reminder that time was slipping away. I sat by his side that morning, holding a bowl of water that was more mud than drink. His lips were too dry to sip it. He looked at me and smiled, that weak, selfless smile that broke me each time. "Don't cry, sister," he whispered. "If I go first, maybe the gods will take pity and send the rain." I turned away before he could see the tears in my eyes. Outside, my mother prayed to gods who had long stopped listening. Her voice cracked like firewood, calling names that even the wind ignored. When she saw me packing the old basket, she clutched my wrist. "Nira," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't go to that place. The forest remembers those who take from it." "I'm not going to take it," I whispered. "I'm going to beg." She said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Hunger had made silence our only language. The path to the forest was quiet, lined with dead grass and dry earth. The trees rose ahead like sleeping giants, their crowns thick enough to block the sun. I hesitated at the edge, staring at the dark between the trunks. The stories came rushing back. How the forest swallowed men whole, how it lured the greedy with golden fruits and left their bones beneath the roots. But desperation makes the heart deaf. I crossed the line between the living and the cursed, feeling the temperature drop as though I'd stepped into another world. The air inside was cool, heavy, filled with the smell of wet soil and ancient secrets. Every sound was amplified. The crunch of my feet, the low sigh of leaves above, the whisper of insects. I moved slowly, eyes wide, basket clutched against my chest. Rays of sunlight slipped through cracks in the canopy, like ghostly fingers, touching patches of moss that glowed faintly, as if alive. I kept walking, praying under my breath that I might find even one fruit the spirits had forgotten. Then I saw her. At first I thought she was part of the forest, a broken branch, a fallen shadow. But as I stepped closer, I saw the frail outline of a woman sitting beneath a wide mango tree, her back bent, her gray hair tangled like roots. Her clothes were rags, her hands thin and shaking. Her eyes were half closed, fixed on a single fruit hanging just above her reach. The mango was golden and perfect, glowing faintly against the darkness, so ripe it seemed to breathe. I stopped a few steps away. "Grandmother?" I called softly. Her head lifted slowly, and when she looked at me, my heart stuttered. Her eyes were not old. They were ancient, deep, luminous, like they had seen everything the world had ever forgotten. She smiled faintly, a smile filled with sorrow. "Child," she whispered, her voice like rustling leaves. "Would you help me?" Something about her tone made me tremble. The forest seemed to lean closer, listening, but pity overpowered my fear. I nodded and climbed the tree carefully. The bark was smooth, warm under my palms, and the closer I reached to the fruit, the heavier the air became. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing inside my head. When I plucked the mango, a strange warmth spread through my arm, like the fruit itself was alive, breathing. I jumped down and placed it gently in her hands. She looked at me with those endless eyes and smiled again. "You are kind," she murmured. "Kindness is rare among the hungry." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt dry. I only nodded and stepped back. That was when everything changed. The forest went quiet. Not like before. Not peaceful quiet, but heavy, unnatural silence. The kind that presses against your ears until you can hear your own fear. The trees stopped moving. The wind died mid-breath. Even the insects froze. The woman looked at me, and in that stillness, her eyes gleamed brighter, golden, like molten sunlight. "You shouldn't have come here," she said softly. "But since you did, the forest will remember." The fruit slipped from her hand. It hit the ground once, softly, and the soil beneath us pulsed like a heartbeat. And before I could even scream, the earth itself began to hum, low, deep, and alive, as though something ancient beneath the roots had just awakened. When the earth's humming finally softened into silence, I dared to raise my eyes, and found her watching me, no longer just a frail shadow beneath a tree, but something vast wearing the shape of a woman. Her gaze carried the weight of centuries, the calm of storms long ended, and when she spoke my name, it was as if the forest itself exhaled the sound through her lips. Every instinct told me to flee, yet every heartbeat pulled me closer, as though my soul recognized hers from a dream I could not remember. The tremor beneath my feet eased, but its echo lingered inside my chest, a strange rhythm that matched her breathing. She did not move toward me, and yet I felt her presence pressing gently against my thoughts, searching, measuring, almost pitying. "How do you know me?" I whispered, though the question broke apart before it reached her. She smiled with that same sad tenderness, the kind one wears for a truth too heavy to speak. "The forest remembers every kindness," she murmured, "and every hunger that is born of love." Her voice was both near and far, filled with sorrow and the quiet power of something eternal. Before I could answer, she lifted her hand and pointed beyond the clearing, into a place where the light was thick and gold and the air shimmered like heat over water. "There are fruits that grow deeper still," she said. "Fruits the world has forgotten, guarded by roots older than memory. Bring them to me, child, and you will understand why mercy was watching you." The request should have been harmless, but the moment her words touched the air, the forest darkened, as if 1,000 unseen eyes had opened at once. The wind coiled through the branches, carrying whispers that were not words, but warnings. My heart urged me to run. My mother's voice echoed in my head, telling me no good thing waits beyond the reach of prayer. But compassion is a dangerous kind of courage. I nodded. She lowered her hand slowly, her expression unreadable. "The forest knows the path," she said, "but it will test what you hold sacred. Do not take more than it offers." I turned toward the glowing haze. The hum beneath my feet returned, softer now, guiding me forward like a pulse under the earth. Each step drew me deeper into a world that felt half dream, half memory. The trees arched above me, their trunks wrapped in veins of gold light that throbbed in time with my heartbeat. The air smelled impossibly sweet, honey, smoke, and something ancient, like rain that had waited 1,000 years to fall. When I reached the heart of that golden thicket, I saw them. Fruits unlike any I had ever known, glowing from within as though each carried a piece of the sun. They hung low, heavy, whispering faintly in the breeze. I reached out. The first one brushed against my palm, and a vision tore through me. A river running backward, stars falling into soil, laughter turning into thunder. I gasped and stumbled, but my hand closed around the fruit. The light dimmed, surrendering to my touch, and warmth spread through my skin, filling my chest with a strange ache that was both peace and pain. I gathered 3 fruits, trembling, and turned back toward the clearing. The forest shifted. The humming stopped again. The gold light faded, replaced by the dim blue of twilight. My breath fogged in the air though the night was warm. Something unseen moved among the roots. slow, deliberate, circling me. The silence pressed harder, and I felt the weight of the Queen's words. The forest tests what you hold sacred. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. No answer came, only the slow rustle of leaves retreating into stillness. Then, from nowhere and everywhere, her voice drifted again, softer, heavier. "Do not fear the forest, Nira. Fear the heart that forgets to give." The tension broke. The path before me opened, bathed in faint golden dust. I hurried along it, clutching the basket tight, the glow from the fruits flickering like candlelight against my skin. When I reached the clearing, the tree still stood. The air still smelled of honey, but the woman was gone. No footprints, no broken branches, no trace of her presence except the stillness she'd left behind. "Grandmother?" I called, my voice barely rising above the wind. Nothing. The silence grew so deep that I could hear my own pulse again, loud, rhythmic, almost in harmony with the faint hum beneath the earth. I stared at the basket, the fruits pulsing softly, and in the glow I saw movement, just for an instant. Her reflection appeared in the curved skin of the fruit, younger, radiant, her hair woven with vines, her eyes blazing gold. "Mercy has been seen," her whisper floated through the branches. The light inside the fruit swelled suddenly, flooding the clearing with blinding gold. I dropped the basket and shielded my eyes, but before the light vanished, I knew. What I had carried back was not fruit, and whatever waited within it had just awakened. When the golden light faded and the last echo of her whisper vanished into the trees, the forest did not fall silent. It began to breathe differently. Every branch seemed to murmur. Every root seemed to shift beneath the soil, and the air itself trembled with 1,000 secret voices whispering words I could almost understand. They wrapped around me like threads of smoke, soft yet deliberate, calling me chosen. And with every breath I took, I felt the forest sinking deeper into me, as if it was not I who had entered it, but it that had entered me. The basket in my hands pulsed faintly, the fruits within it glowing like trapped stars. I could feel their warmth against my skin, gentle but insistent, a heartbeat that did not belong to me. I glanced over my shoulder, hoping to see her, the frail old woman whose eyes had held both sorrow and eternity, but the clearing was empty. Only the wind remained, curling through the leaves, carrying her absence like a song that refused to end. I took a hesitant step backward, then another. The forest shifted around me. The same trees that had seemed to guide me now loomed closer, their shadows twisting into shapes that looked almost human. My breath came unevenly. The air was too thick, too alive. Then I heard it. My name. Not shouted, not spoken, exhaled. Nira. It came from nowhere and everywhere, stretched and woven through the rustle of leaves. I turned in circles, clutching the basket tight, my heart pounding. The forest answered with another whisper, this time softer, closer. Chosen one. The fruit remembers your touch. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to obey. Something larger than fear held me still, a strange pull that felt like destiny, pretending to be danger. I began, walking again, though I no longer knew which way was out. The forest shimmered around me. Light flickered across the bark, shadows bent toward my steps, and the path beneath my feet glowed faintly like veins of fire buried beneath glass. The voices followed me, echoing between the trees, overlapping like waves, some male, some female, some too ancient to belong to anything human. Their tones were soft, but filled with a sorrow that made my chest ache. Mercy is rare. She gave freely. She must now see what mercy awakens. The words crawled through my veins. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the rhythm of my heart clash with the pulse of the forest. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" And then came the laughter. Faint at first, delicate as falling petals, but it grew, spinning through the air like the memory of joy turned inside out. It was her laughter, the old woman's, but no longer frail or human. It carried light and distance, warmth and something divine. "Where are you?" I called, though my voice cracked halfway through. "Please, tell me what this means." The laughter stopped. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then the light shifted again. A low hum rolled through the ground, deep and rhythmic, like the pulse of the earth itself. The trees began to sway, their branches bending not with the wind, but with intent. The air around me shimmered gold and green, and I felt the forest closing in, not to trap me, but to show me something. The roots beneath my feet glowed faintly, curling and uncurling like breathing serpents. A soft wind brushed my face, and with it came a voice. Not hers, but many. They spoke together, their harmony haunting and perfect. "You carry her gift. You hold the forest's heart. You walk between what was and what will be." The basket trembled in my hands. The fruits glowed brighter, throbbing with a rhythm that made my arms ache. And then, light spilled out from between the leaves, forming a trail ahead of me. I followed. The forest stretched wider than I remembered, its air now thick with the scent of flowers I couldn't name. Golden dust floated through the air, catching on my skin, making me glow faintly in the darkness. I should have been terrified, but a strange calm settled inside me. The fear had become something else, an understanding that I was part of something ancient, something that had been waiting. At the center of that glowing path, the air rippled like water, and for the first time, I saw her, not in flesh, but in light. Her form shimmered, translucent, built of golden mist and memory. Her hair flowed like river water, her eyes vast as dawn. "You heard the forest," she said, her voice overlapping with the whisper of the leaves. "It knows your heart, Nira. It knows the mercy you carry. That mercy has awakened what once slept." "I don't understand," I said, though part of me already did. "You will," she replied. "But first, you must see." The trees behind her began to glow, their trunks splitting open to reveal veins of light. A wind rose, swirling around us, carrying petals that glimmered like falling stars. The hum grew stronger, vibrating through the ground, through my bones. I dropped to my knees, overwhelmed by the sound, by the light, by her presence that was too vast to be human. She stepped closer, or floated closer. I could no longer tell. The light from her body flared, and for a moment she was both old and young, frail and mighty, mortal and divine. Her face shifted between ages, between time itself. My heart pounded. "Who are you?" I whispered. Her lips curved into a smile, gentle, endless. "I am what you called mercy, child. I am what your people forgot to thank. I am the queen of this forest, and you have awakened me." The words hit me like a storm, truth and terror bound together. The humming reached a fever pitch. The fruits in the basket glowed blindingly bright, spilling golden fire across the ground. The light wrapped around me, rising like smoke, warm and heavy. My body trembled, and I couldn't tell whether the forest was breathing or I was. And then, through the golden blaze, she appeared fully, floating inches above the ground, radiant as the sun after 1,000 years of sleep, her hair alive with vines, her brow crowned in leaves that pulsed with light. The queen of the forest had awakened, and she was looking straight into my soul. It began not with thunder or storm, but with light. A soft, trembling glow that spilled from her skin and unfolded like dawn, rising over a world that had forgotten morning. The air grew thick with scent, sweet and ancient, and in that golden shimmer I saw her for what she truly was. Not a beggar, not a spirit, but something beyond both grace and danger. Her body shimmered between woman and wilderness, her eyes no longer human, but oceans of gold where stars were being born. When she spoke, Her words did not pass through the air. They bloomed inside my chest. "You fed a beggar," she said, and her voice trembled through the roots, "not knowing you served a queen." Her glow deepened, swallowing the shadows around us. The rags that clung to her shoulders disintegrated into threads of light, spinning upward into the air before vanishing among the leaves. The ground itself began to tremble, not in violence, but reverence. The trees bent, their branches bowing low, shedding petals that floated like blessings through the air. I wanted to speak, but my voice had fled. My body shook as I sank to my knees, head bowed, eyes fixed on the earth. The forest was no longer just alive. It was awake, and every root, every leaf, every breath around me was singing her name in silence. "You showed mercy when no one else would," she said, and the sound was both thunder and lullaby. And the forest remembers every act of mercy, for it is mercy that keeps it alive. I lifted my head slowly. Her form was changing even as she spoke. Vines crept from her ankles, curling up her legs like living silk. Flowers burst into bloom wherever they touched her. Orchids, lilies, and blossoms I had never seen before, each one shimmering like jewels wet with morning dew. Her hair flowed down her back in rivers of silver and emerald, catching the faintest rays of sunlight, breaking through the canopy. "I thought you were only a woman," I whispered. "How can you be this?" She smiled, and even that simple movement made the air hum. "I am the beginning and the end of every seed that grows," she said. "I am what your ancestors once knew by name, and what your people forgot to thank. The one you called Curse was only waiting for a heart pure enough to listen." Her gaze softened, filled with that same sorrow I had seen when she was still disguised. "You came with nothing but hunger," she said, "and yet you gave. The forest heard that gift. It will not forget." The earth began to pulse beneath my palms, deep, rhythmic, like a living heartbeat. The glow from her body spread across the ground, tracing patterns into the soil. Spirals of light, roots of gold, blooming into shapes that pulsed like veins beneath the surface. The air was alive with movement. I felt it filling me, pressing against my skin. "What is happening?" I breathed. "Why do I feel this?" She turned her palm upward, and a small sphere of golden dust rose from it, swirling like a miniature sun. "Because mercy binds the living to the land," she said. "You have touched the thread that connects all things. You have reminded the forest what kindness feels like." The sphere floated toward me, hovering before my heart. I felt heat radiate from it, not burning, but awakening something deep inside me. Memories of laughter, of my mother's prayers, of my brother's small hand clutching mine. The warmth turned into light, seeping into my chest until it was part of my breath. She watched me quietly, as if weighing whether I would break or endure. "You are not here by accident, child," she said. "The forest called to you." I only answered. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and flowers. Above us, the sky cracked open, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Gentle at first, then steady, washing over my face, cooling the heat on my skin. The light from her body refracted through every drop, turning the rain into falling diamonds. I laughed, the sound breaking free before I knew it, and she smiled faintly. "You see," she whispered, "the forest repays what it is given. Kindness births life, always." I looked down, realizing that the soil around us had turned green again. Tiny sprouts had pushed through the earth in seconds, leaves unfurling toward the rain. It was as if time itself bowed to her presence. But as I looked back up, her expression changed. The warmth in her eyes dimmed, replaced by something deeper, knowing, solemn. "What's wrong?" I asked softly. She studied me for a long moment, her voice a whisper when it came. "When one heart is chosen by the forest, it never remains only human. The gift that gives life also takes something in return." I felt the air grow colder, The golden light wavered, dimming at the edges. "I don't understand," I said. "Take what? Why me?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Because the forest does not choose by chance. It chooses those who give without thought, those who love without fear. But every gift must find balance. Mercy cannot exist without sacrifice." The hum in the ground grew louder. The light flared, wrapping around us in threads that shimmered and twisted like living flame. The scent of rain deepened, sweeter now, tinged with something electric. She reached out her hand again, her palm glowing so bright it turned the raindrops into sparks. "Do not fear what you have awakened," she said, her tone calm but heavy with finality. "The forest remembers you, Nira, and it is time you remember it." The wind rose into a roar. Leaves spun wildly around us. The light in her eyes expanded until I could see nothing else. She placed her hand on my forehead, and the world erupted, not in fire, but in pure, endless light that filled every vein, every breath, every thought. I screamed, but no sound came out. The forest's heartbeat drowned everything. The light wasn't blinding. It was alive, burning not to destroy, but to transform. And in its center, I heard her voice again, soft, infinite. "You are seen, child of mercy. And now, you will remember." When the storm of light finally dimmed, the world stood still, suspended between silence and breath, and in that stillness, she stood before me. No longer the fierce goddess who had commanded the sky, but something softer, sadder, infinitely older. The glow that surrounded her had gentled to a pale gold, like the last light before dusk, and in her open palms rested a single seed that pulsed as if it carried the rhythm of life itself. The forest had gone utterly quiet. Even the wind seemed afraid to move, waiting, reverent. "Take it," she said, her voice no longer echoing from the heavens but trembling with something human. "Plant this at your home, and it will feed and heal your family, so long as your heart remains kind." The words felt heavier than the air around them. I could see the seed, small, delicate, glowing softly, yet beating faintly like a newborn heart. Every pulse matched the trembling in my chest. My fingers shook as I reached for it. When she placed it in my hand, warmth spread through my skin, up my arm, and straight into my heart, like sunlight poured into my veins. The forest responded. The ground hummed gently, the leaves rustled in low harmony, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of running water stirred again, as if the whole world was waking from sleep. Tears slipped down my face, before I even knew I was crying. "You saved us," I whispered. "You saved my family." But she shook her head slowly. The sorrow in her eyes dimmed the glow around her, a kind of ache that made her seem suddenly mortal again. "Do not thank me," she said softly. "The forest does not give without purpose. Every gift carries its shadow. Mercy, when planted in hearts not ready for it, can grow into greed." Her words settled in the air like falling dust. I felt a chill run down my spine. "I'll protect it," I said quickly. "No one will touch it. I'll keep it safe." Her gaze held mine, tender, but heavy with knowing. "Do not tell anyone where it came from," she warned, and her voice deepened, layered now with the echo of something far greater than her form. "Greed destroys what mercy creates. The forest watches, and it forgets nothing." The forest seemed to bow to her words. The trees swayed without wind. The vines trembled as if whispering their loyalty, and the ground beneath our feet pulsed once, deep and slow, like a promise sealed in earth. I swallowed, clutching the seed to my chest. It was warm, impossibly alive, and I felt its rhythm sinking with mine until I could no longer tell where my heartbeat ended and its began. "I don't understand," I said quietly. "Why me? Why this?" She smiled faintly, that same knowing, sorrowful smile that held both blessing and farewell. "Because mercy does not choose strength, child. It chooses love. You have carried love through hunger, and the forest remembers those who love in despair. Her light began to fade again, but this time it was not sudden. It was deliberate, graceful, as though she were melting into the air itself. Her voice grew fainter, yet somehow more intimate, wrapping around me like a song meant for one listener. "Plant it where your tears have fallen," she whispered. "Let it grow in the soil of your sorrow. Only then will its fruits feed more than the body. They will heal the heart that watered it." I stood frozen as her shape blurred into dust and light. The vines around her unfurled, weaving upward toward the sky. And then she was gone. Only the soft glow of the seed in my hands remained, a reminder, a promise, and a burden all at once. For a long time I couldn't move. The forest no longer sang, it only watched. Every leaf, every flower seemed to lean toward me, silent witnesses to what had just transpired. I pressed the seed to my heart, its warmth steady against my skin. It felt alive, aware, and as it pulsed once more, I could swear I heard it sigh, like a heartbeat, learning the world. I took a step forward, and the forest shifted gently, parting before me. The path home opened itself like a memory, the air turning cooler, lighter, filled with the scent of rain-soaked wood. The moon had risen, silver, distant, untouched by what had just been born in my hand. I walked. Every few steps, the forest murmured softly beneath my feet, a low resonant hum like a lullaby for the earth itself. I kept glancing at the seed, half afraid it would vanish, half afraid it would grow right there in my palm. Its light dimmed as I neared the forest's edge, as though it did not wish to be seen by the eyes of men. When the last line of trees opened to reveal my village, I stopped and looked back. The forest stood behind me, vast, endless, and impossibly still. I could still feel her presence in the air, faint but watchful, the weight of her trust pressing against my heart. I whispered into the night, "I'll protect it. I'll keep it pure." The seed flickered gently in answer. I started toward home, and the wind followed me, brushing against my hair, carrying her scent, the strange sweetness of rain, earth, and something ancient. It was as if the forest itself was exhaling me back into my life, trusting me to carry its breath. As I walked, her words played again and again in my mind. The gift carries its shadow. Mercy can become greed. I didn't yet understand, but the ache in her voice had planted a fear that no promise could ease. When I reached the field where my mother used to sing, I stopped. The moonlight touched the cracked earth, and I held up the seed. It glowed faintly, casting a halo on my hand. I smiled through my tears. "We're almost home," I whispered. Almost. But just as I took another step, the air shifted again, light as breath, sharp as memory. Her voice returned, distant but unmistakable, threading through the night like a warning carried by wind. "The path home depends on your truth," she said, her tone neither gentle nor stern, but woven with the weight of destiny. "Should your heart falter, the forest will turn its face from you." The wind fell silent, and the seed in my palm glowed one last time, bright enough to light the path ahead, yet fragile enough to tremble, as if even it feared what truth might cost. The forest did not release me gently. It unwrapped me from its shadows like a jealous lover, slow and unwilling, as if it feared that once I left, I would forget the breath it had given me. Every path bent upon itself, every ray of light twisted away from the truth of direction, and each whisper that floated through the branches carried both blessing and warning. The air thickened with voices that breathed my name, pleading for me to stay, while the hum beneath the earth pulsed faster, as though the forest's heart and mind still beat as one. I whispered to the wind that I would remember, but even that promise felt too small beneath its ancient silence. The seed glowed faintly in my hand, its light softer now, like the fading warmth of a sunset that doesn't want to die. It pulsed with every beat of my heart, the rhythm keeping me grounded as the trees shifted around me like a living maze. I could no longer tell whether I walked through wood or dream. I thought of my mother's hollow eyes, my brother's fragile chest, the silence of our hut. That memory burned like a torch, guiding me through the dim green of eternity. Still the forest resisted, whispering, "Stay," its leaves trembling like 1,000 pleading hands. I pressed forward. Branches brushed my shoulders as though reluctant to let me go. The path curled and vanished beneath my feet, reappearing only when I whispered prayers into the heavy air, my mother's old verses for lost souls. The forest shivered each time I spoke them, as if remembering what faith sounded like. Then I heard it, a voice, distant but unmistakable, calling my name. Nira. I froze. It came again, clearer, soaked in tears and breath. My mother's voice. "Mother?" I cried, turning wildly. "Mother, I'm here!" The forest grew louder, the rustle of leaves rising like 1,000 sighs. But her voice cut through them all, sharp with love and desperation. I ran toward it, the earth pulling at my feet, branches clawing my dress, roots gripping my ankles like hands. I stumbled, fell, but rose again. The forest groaned, furious, alive, its hum deepening into a growl. Light appeared ahead, thin at first, then stronger, gold, and real. I ran faster, the sound of my heartbeat merging with the forest's rumble, until the trees broke apart and sunlight struck my face. I fell to my knees, gasping, my lungs filling with the scent of dust and home. Nira. Her voice was no longer an echo. It was here, real. When I looked up, she was running toward me, her shawl flying behind her, her feet bare and bleeding from the rocks. She fell beside me, gathering me into her arms before I could even speak. "My child," she sobbed, pressing her forehead to mine. "You came back. The forest gave you back to me." I clung to her, trembling, the weight of days or years melting into her warmth. "I'm here, Mother," I whispered. "I didn't mean to be gone." She pulled back, her face streaked with tears. 2 days, she said softly. "You were gone for 2 days. We searched, but the forest swallowed every path. The elders said no one returns from where you went. 2 days. It had felt like lifetimes. I wanted to tell her what had happened, about the queen, the gift, the warning, but the words felt sacred, too heavy for mortal ears. I only held her hand tighter and nodded. That night, after she and my brother fell asleep, I sat outside, beneath the silver wash of moonlight. The world was quiet now, but the hum of the forest still echoed faintly in the distance. The seed lay in my palm, glowing faintly, alive, waiting. I remembered the Queen's words, "Plant it where your tears have fallen." I dug a small hollow beside our hut, the same spot where my mother once planted herbs that had long since withered. The soil was dry, but it warmed beneath my hands. I placed the seed inside, whispering, "Grow for them. Grow for us." The ground trembled softly, a single breath rising from the earth. Then silence. I waited, but nothing changed. I sat there, my fingers resting over the soil until sleep claimed me beneath the cold stars. When I opened my eyes, the dawn light was golden. The air smelled of rain and honey. My mother's gasp cut through the morning stillness. "Nira," she whispered, "come see." I turned and froze. Where the seed had been, a tree now stood, tall, radiant, golden. Its trunk shimmered with veins of light, its leaves gleamed like metal kissed by sunlight, and from its branches hung fruits that glowed softly, breathing as if alive. The sight struck me silent. My mother fell to her knees, covering her mouth. "A miracle," she murmured. "A gift from the gods." I couldn't answer. The Queen's warning echoed inside me. Greed destroys what mercy creates. I approached the tree slowly, pressing my palm to its trunk. The wood was warm, pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of something divine. The hum I had heard in the forest now resonated beneath my skin, familiar and infinite. I looked up at the branches stretching toward the morning sky, each leaf shimmering with light. I could still feel her presence within them, the queen, the forest, the mercy that had followed me home. By dawn, the golden tree towered above our hut, its branches heavy with glowing fruit that shimmered like pieces of the sun. The air trembled softly, alive with whispers I could almost understand. And beneath the soil, the ground throbbed with a living pulse. As I stood there, awed and afraid, a wind rose from the forest's edge, carrying a voice that brushed against my ear. The gift has rooted, Nira. Now see what it will grow. At dawn, the world woke not to sunlight, but to gold. It spilled through the branches of the tree that had risen overnight, bathing our hut in light so pure it felt like a dream that refused to fade. The air shimmered with warmth and the faint scent of honey, while the earth itself glowed beneath our feet as though the forest had poured its soul into our soil. I stepped outside and saw the villagers standing frozen at the edge of our yard, faces pale, eyes wide, their silence trembling with the weight of disbelief. For the first time in my life, I saw people bow not to a god of the sky, but to something that had grown from the heart of mercy itself. The tree stood taller than any palm, its trunk alive with veins of light that pulsed softly, steady as a heartbeat. Its leaves shifted between silver and emerald, whispering in a language the wind could barely carry. And its fruits, round golden, glowing with life, hung low like blessings waiting to be taken. My mother clutched my hand as tears streamed down her cheeks. "It's a miracle, Nira," she whispered. "The gods heard us. They've given us back what the earth had forgotten." But I knew better. This was no god's gift. It was the queen's promise, the forest's echo breathing in my yard. The hum beneath the soil had returned, faint but steady, reminding me that this miracle still belonged to something older than faith and stronger than prayer. My brother Tommy stood beside me, weak but curious. His eyes sparkled as the morning light danced on the golden fruits. "Can we taste it?" he asked. Before I could answer, one of the fruits detached itself from a branch and landed softly at his feet. Its skin gleamed, warm to the touch, as though it recognized him. My mother gasped. "Don't," she began, but Tommy had already taken a small bite. The moment his lips touched it, light flared under his skin. His frail body straightened, his color returned, and the dullness in his eyes vanished like smoke. He laughed, a sound so pure it filled the air and made the tree's leaves tremble in response. "I'm not sick anymore," he cried, his voice echoing through the village. The word spread faster than wildfire. Within an hour, the villagers filled our yard, old men leaning on canes, mothers carrying crying children, faces hollowed by hunger. Each one looked at the tree as though it were the answer to every forgotten prayer. We shared freely. One fruit, then another, until everyone had tasted a piece of wonder. The old danced again, the hungry smiled, and laughter, real bright laughter, rose from the dust. For the first time in years, the village breathed in peace. Even the birds returned, circling the golden crown of the tree as though drawn by memory. That night, the village glowed with light, not from fire, but from joy. My mother placed her hand on my cheek and whispered, "This is what mercy looks like, Nira. The gods must have chosen you." Her words filled me with warmth and unease, because every time I looked at the tree, I felt eyes within it, unseen, but knowing. The leaves shifted even without wind, and the glow beneath its bark throbbed faintly in rhythm with my own heart. The forest had not forgotten me. It had only moved closer. By the third day, the miracle had become a mystery. The villagers came not just for hope, but for answers. "What spirit lives inside it?" they asked. What did you do to summon such power? I had no answers, only silence. And in that silence, suspicion was born. The elders gathered, their faces hard, their voices low. They said no mortal should wield the power of life and healing, that anything so divine born from soil could not be trusted. And when the fruits refused their touch, when the branches bent away from greedy hands, their fear turned to anger. My mother begged them to stop, but their whispers spread faster than truth. It's witchcraft, someone said. No child could summon gods. Another voice rose, sharp with envy. She's cursed the land to make herself holy. I tried to defend the tree, to tell them it belonged to mercy, not magic. But their faces had already changed. Wonder had turned to suspicion, suspicion to envy, and envy to hate. That evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, I heard footsteps outside, soft at first, then heavy, deliberate. Through the thin wall of our hut, the murmur of voices drifted in, angry, bitter, afraid. I rose quietly and looked through the narrow gap in the wood. A crowd had gathered, men with torches, others holding axes. Their faces were red in the firelight, their shadows stretched long across the ground, trembling with heat and intent. The torches flared brighter, painting their eyes in gold and flame as they stepped closer to the tree that had fed them, healed them, saved them. The wind rose suddenly, whispering through the leaves like a warning, and the hum beneath the earth returned, deep, furious, alive. I pressed my hand to the ground and felt the heartbeat quicken. The forest was waking again, and this time, it was not to give. It began not with a scream, but with the sound of breaking trust, the dull, sickening thud of an axe against something living, something sacred. I shouted for them to stop, but my voice was swallowed by the roar of their fear and the hunger that had grown in their eyes. The tree that had once fed them, healed them, and blessed their children, now stood surrounded by the very hands it had saved, their torches spitting sparks like the tongues of devils in prayer. The golden light that had once meant hope now burned like judgment, spilling through the night as the first strike split the bark, and from its wound came not sap, but fire, a fire that breathed, that screamed, that remembered. The flames burst upward in a single breath, curling through the branches like living veins of fury. They did not burn red. They burned gold, bright as molten sunlight, alive and furious. The men staggered back, their faces twisted in shock as the fire took form, shaping itself into the faces of spirits, weeping, writhing, calling out in pain. Each flame was a voice of the forest, and every cry was the sound of betrayal given life. The earth trembled beneath my feet. I fell to my knees, clutching the soil that had given birth to the miracle, feeling it pulse beneath my palms like a dying heart. "Stop," I cried again, my throat raw, tears cutting lines through the ash on my face. "You don't understand. It's alive." But the men couldn't hear me. Fear had turned them deaf. Greed had made them blind. One tried to swing his axe again, but the blade caught fire mid-air, the handle glowing red before shattering into embers. He screamed, clutching his burning hands, and the others fled, tripping over each other as they stumbled into the dark. The fire did not chase them. It turned inward, toward the roots, toward the hut, toward me. The air grew heavy, hot enough to steal breath, and when I turned, I saw the edge of our roof already aflame, the straw curling into black smoke. My mother's voice pierced the chaos. "Nira, the house!" I ran to her, grabbed her hand. My brother was crying, the light of the flames reflected in his wet eyes. "We have to go," I shouted, but the smoke was everywhere, thick, choking, alive. I dragged them outside, coughing, my body shaking with heat and terror. The tree was no longer gold. It was a tower of fire, every branch screaming with light. The hum I had once loved, the gentle rhythm of life, had become a deep, thunderous pulse that made the ground quiver. And then, through that roar, I heard her voice. The Queen. It came from the fire itself, low and resonant, carrying both sorrow and wrath. "Nira," she said, and the sound of my name felt like the earth itself speaking. Her form flickered within the flames, the same golden eyes, now sharp as lightning. Her voice filled the burning air. "They have broken the balance." I dropped to my knees, shielding my face from the heat. "Please," I begged, "don't hurt them. They didn't know. Forgive them." Her flames pulsed, brighter for a heartbeat. "Mercy was your gift," she said softly, "and mercy was theirs to protect. But they traded it for fear." Her words cut deeper than the fire itself. Around me, the village burned, the light consuming the sky, the smoke twisting into shapes that cried and fell apart. I could see the men who had fled now watching from the fields, their faces pale with horror, the flames reflected in their wide eyes. The Queen's voice grew heavier. "The gift cannot live among hearts that deny it." I felt the ground beneath me shift. Cracks opened around the roots of the tree, glowing with green light that bled into the fire. The soil trembled, the sound deep and rhythmic, not destruction, but awakening. The fire didn't spread. It gathered, spiraling upward into a single burning column. The air vibrated with power. Every spark that rose into the sky burst like a star and vanished, leaving behind trails of gold that lingered like tears. My mother clutched my brother to her chest, both of them trembling. I reached for them, but my hands were shaking too hard to hold. Then, through the blaze, the Queen's face appeared fully, vast, terrible, beautiful. The fire bent toward her, as though it worshipped her. "The balance has been broken," she whispered, and her words were not a threat. They were prophecies. The hum deepened. The roots beneath our home began to glow, threads of golden light stretching across the ground, racing toward the forest beyond the hills. The fire's voice grew louder, a song of grief and anger interwoven. I pressed my palms to the earth again. It was burning, but I couldn't let go. "Please," I whispered, "take back what you need. But don't take them." Her gaze softened. "The forest reclaims not in cruelty," she said, "but in truth." Then she lifted her hand, and the sky itself answered. The flames rose higher than the trees, twisting into a spiral of gold that tore through the clouds. The air trembled as her voice echoed through the burning night. Soft, mournful, final. "They have broken the balance," she whispered, her words threading through the roar. "Now the forest must reclaim what is lost." The light consumed everything, and as the ground opened beneath me, I felt the pull of roots dragging me downward, back into the heart of the living earth. When the fire's roar died into silence, I felt myself falling, not through darkness, but through light so soft and endless, it felt like the inside of a breath. I awoke on a bed of living moss, damp and glowing faintly beneath my fingers, its warmth pulsing like the echo of a sleeping heart. Around me stretched a forest made of silver mist and trembling stars. Every leaf shimmered from within. Every drop of dew whispered faint notes that hung in the air like sorrow turned into song. I was surrounded by beauty that mourned, by life that remembered its pain. And at the center of that stillness stood the Queen, her form dimmed, her crown a flicker of fading gold, her eyes holding both eternity and exhaustion. For a moment, I could only stare. The air around her moved like liquid light, each motion sending ripples through the mist. She looked weaker now, her glow uneven, her voice quieter when she spoke. "You have crossed the threshold, child of mercy," she said. "This is the place where the forest keeps its soul." Her words floated through the stillness, calm but heavy. I tried to stand, but my body felt weightless, my hands half transparent against the shimmering light. Where am I?" "In the heart between worlds," she replied softly, "where balance breathes its last before it is born again." Her tone carried a sorrow that made my chest tighten. The silver mist around us pulsed faintly, and within it I saw shapes, faces, human and animal, flickering like ghosts painted in moonlight. Each one seemed to cry, though no sound came. "They are the spirits of the wounded," she said quietly, reading my thoughts. "Your world's greed wounded them. The fire that touched the tree burned not only roots and leaves, but the very bond that joined us." I bowed my head, guilt rising like smoke in my throat. "I didn't want this," I whispered. "I tried to protect it." She smiled faintly, her light trembling. "And that is why you are here. Mercy brought you across when the fire tried to end you. You carry the last echo of the bond that once connected our worlds." The ground beneath me hummed softly, a sound both alive and sorrowful. The moss turned warmer, glowing gold through the silver light. I realized that the forest itself was bleeding through me, that I was breathing its pain. "The tree," I said. "It was more than a gift, wasn't it?" Her eyes lifted, ancient and full of knowing. "It was a bridge," she said, "between need and giving, between mortal breath and eternal root. When they destroyed it, they shattered the thread that held mercy to the world." The mist around her darkened as though her words had, "Wait." I could see her form flickering now, her crown almost gone. "Your people's fear has weakened both realms," she said softly. "What dies in one, decays in the other. My strength fades because your world no longer believes in kindness without reward." I took a trembling step closer. "Can it be saved?" She looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold both dawn and dusk. "Perhaps," she said, "but only one heart can hold what was lost. Only one can bridge what greed has broken." The air stirred. The whispering faces within the mist began to move, gathering behind her like waves of silver breath. The light around us dimmed. The hum deepened. I could feel something vast and patient watching, waiting. Her voice trembled slightly now. "To save both worlds, another must take my place, one who carries true mercy not as a burden, but as nature." I froze, the truth dawning on me before she even said it. "You mean—" "Yes," she said, stepping closer, her fading hand reaching out to touch my heart. "You, Nira." The forest seemed to still be at her word. Every whisper fell silent. The light that hung in the air froze in place. Her face was kind, but there was sorrow in her smile. A mother's farewell wrapped in a goddess's command. "I can't," I whispered. "I'm human. I'm just—" She placed a finger against my lips, her touch warm but insubstantial. "You were chosen not because you are more," she said, "but because you gave when you had nothing left. That is all the forest ever needed." Her glow began to fade, her form unraveling into ribbons of gold that drifted through the air. The mist turned darker, the hum slowing like a dying breath. I felt time stop. The Queen's final light flickered across her eyes as she looked into mine, deep, calm, infinite. "Now the bridge must live again," she whispered. "Will you take my place, child of mercy?" The mist trembled. Every spirit turned toward me, and the silence grew heavy with waiting. In that breath between heartbeats, I knew. Whatever answer I gave would decide which world would be allowed to keep its soul. Time had stopped. Even the mist seemed to hold its breath as her question lingered in the air. "Will you take my place, child of mercy?" In that stillness, memories unfolded like petals after rain. My mother's trembling hands reaching for me through hunger. My brother's laughter echoing through an empty hut. The warmth of the golden tree before the night it burned. All that I loved and all that I lost spun before me, woven together by a single truth. Mercy had always demanded something greater than faith. It demanded surrender. The Queen's fading light flickered before me, and in her eyes I saw the reflection of a world begging to be mended. I took a slow breath. though air felt heavier here, thick with the scent of roots and rain. "If my life can restore what was broken," I whispered, "then take it." Her expression softened, and the silver realm shuddered gently, as if the forest itself had heard my words and sighed in relief. "You would give yourself freely?" she asked, her voice trembling between exhaustion and reverence. I nodded. "You gave me hope when there was none left. Let me return it." For a heartbeat, silence ruled the realm. Then the queen's dim crown brightened, not in brilliance, but in warmth. "Then mercy has found its heir," she said, and her hand rose, trembling yet sure. The moment her palm touched my chest, light burst through me. It wasn't fire or pain, it was everything. The pulse of the earth thundered inside my veins. I could feel the roots beneath the soil weaving through my blood, the rivers whispering in rhythm with my heart. Every living thing became a note in one endless song, and I was its echo. The queen's voice threaded through the radiance. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "Yes," I managed to breathe. "It's alive." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "As are you. This is the heart you were born to carry, the heart that must never forget to forgive." The light grew stronger, swirling around us like a storm of gold. I felt my feet lift slightly from the moss, the weight of my human body loosening. The glow from her crown began to scatter, its fragments swirling toward me, melting into my skin as warmth, as life. "This crown is not power," she said, her voice faint now, fading into the hum of the forest. "It is a memory. The forest will remember your kindness through every leaf and stream. And when men forget mercy again, it will be your name the roots whisper." Tears filled my eyes. "But I don't want them to worship me," I said. "I just want them to live." Her smile deepened, soft as moonlight. "And that," she said, "is why you are worthy." The ground beneath me vibrated. The silver moss turned gold, the mist glowing with 1,000 tiny stars. I could feel myself dissolving into it, my breath becoming wind, my heartbeat melting into the rhythm of the world. The sensation was not death, but return. Her form flickered, nearly gone now. "The forest is breathing through you," she said, her words echoing like the final verse of an ancient song. "Do not fear the loss of shape. You will still be here, in every mercy that blooms." I closed my eyes as the warmth climbed my chest, my arms, my throat. The queen stepped closer, her hands cupping my face one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, her light spilling across my skin like dawn breaking. "You have given more than life. You have given balance." The mist around us turned golden, thick and alive. I felt the weight of her crown rest upon my head, light as breath, heavy as eternity. Roots sprouted around my feet, curling upward, weaving through my fingers, pulling me gently toward the soil. The queen smiled through her fading glow as her body dissolved into light. The warmth of her spirit flowed into me, sinking deep until I could no longer tell where her soul ended and mine began. My body unraveled into petals and vines, the scent of rain rising from my skin, and as the last of my breath became wind, I felt the forest open its eyes through mine. The queen was gone, and I was becoming her. When the light of creation folded back into stillness, I opened my eyes, and the world breathed through me. I was no longer flesh, no longer bound by the smallness of bone and heartbeat. I was the wind brushing through the leaves, the river's endless whisper, the pulse in the soil beneath a child's feet. My veins had become streams, my voice the rustle of green life stretching toward the sun. The forest had claimed me, but it had not taken me. It had made me whole. Through every root and flower, I could still feel the echo of the girl I once was, watching, loving, remembering. The first thing I saw was my home. Not the burnt ruin it had been, but renewed, soil rich, fields bright, the golden tree standing proud once more beside the hut where my mother prayed. My spirit trembled with joy and ache as I saw her kneeling beneath its glow, her hair streaked with silver now, her lips moving in quiet thanks. She could not see me, but when the wind brushed her cheek, she smiled, as though she knew I was there. My brother, no longer frail, moved through the village with a healer's hands, his eyes kind, his laughter carrying the rhythm of the same mercy that had saved him. He taught others to plant, to give, to live without fear of loss. Watching them, I understood what the Queen had meant when she said that memory does not die. It only takes new roots. The village that once burned with envy now knelt with devotion. Each season they came, leaving flowers and grain beneath my branches, whispering prayers not of greed, but of gratitude. They did not know their goddess had once been a girl who bled and feared and loved among them. They only knew that the forest had forgiven them, and that mercy still bloomed. Centuries passed like days. Generations rose and fell beneath my gaze. Their stories changed. Their words softened into myth. They forgot my name, but they remembered my kindness. Children played beneath the golden tree, chasing the fruits that glowed in moonlight. Lovers carved promises into my bark, and mothers sang songs of blessing into the wind, believing it would carry their wishes home. I was everywhere. In the rivers that sang through the valley, in the rain that kissed their fields, in the scent of blossoms after storms. I felt their joy and their sorrow, their births and their farewells. I had become the memory of every act of mercy the world still dared to give. Yet even eternity has silence. Sometimes, when night fell quiet and the stars hung low, I would feel the weight of what I had left behind, the warmth of my mother's embrace, the sound of my brother's laughter, the softness of being human. The forest's heart beat within me, but it was not love that hurt. It was remembering how it once felt to need it. The Queen's voice, faint as dew, still lived within me. It would rise like wind through the leaves, whispering, "Balance must never rest. Mercy must always move." And I would listen, understanding that even peace needs renewal. Time folded into itself. Empires crumbled beyond my roots. Languages turned to dust. Still the forest stood, untamed, golden, eternal. The world changed, but the rhythm of giving and taking remained. And then, one dawn, after countless quiet years, I felt something shift beneath the soil. It was faint at first, a heartbeat not my own, fragile yet familiar, trembling through the earth like the first drop of rain after drought. It grew stronger, calling to me the way my heart had once called to the Queen's, a human heart, pure, afraid, kind, stepping hesitantly between my trees. The wind stirred, the rivers brightened, the roots beneath me hummed like strings, remembering an old melody. I knew this feeling. I had once been this feeling. Mercy had found its way back. And as the light of morning spilled through my leaves, I felt it, the gentle pull of destiny repeating itself. Another heart had entered my forest, beating with the same trembling courage I once carried. The soil awakened, the branches bowed low, and through the whispering leaves I spoke for the first time in centuries. Welcome, child of mercy. The forest remembers you. The morning light poured through the trees like a long-forgotten memory, returning to breathe again. The forest was quiet, waiting, its golden leaves trembling in a hush that felt sacred. Then she appeared, a young girl, barefoot and bright-eyed, her worn basket swinging lightly at her side as she stepped beneath my branches. She walked with that same innocence I had once carried, the same soft courage that dares to be kind, even when the world has been cruel. And when she saw the old woman sitting weak beneath the tree, her body trembling with hunger, she didn't hesitate. She simply knelt, reaching up toward the fruit that hung above them like stars caught in daylight. The wind shifted through the forest, gentle but knowing, carrying the scent of rain and something older, recognition. I felt the roots quiver beneath her feet, the hum that had slept for centuries stir again in the depths of the soil. Through the eyes of the forest, through the pulse of every branch, I watched her, and my spirit trembled with the ache of remembrance. She was me, not in flesh, but in heart. The same pulse of mercy, newly born, breathing through another soul. When she offered the fruit, her hand steadied despite her youth. The light changed, golden and soft, the same sacred glow that had once wrapped around me when I first gave. The old woman looked up, her eyes filling with tears that shimmered like liquid dawn. "Thank you, child," she whispered, her voice shaking as if the world itself had spoken through her. The girl smiled, shy and unguarded, unaware that in that single moment she had become the center of something eternal. The forest exhaled. Leaves sighed overhead. The ground hummed beneath. Rivers brightened like veins filling with light. All around her, life recognized the pattern. Mercy returning to its root. I felt it move through me like a heartbeat that had waited lifetimes to begin again. Above them, sunlight broke through the canopy, painting their faces in gold. The air itself seemed to shimmer, alive with the pulse of renewal. Every living thing, tree, flower, bird, bent toward the girl in quiet reverence. Even time seemed to slow, bowing before what it understood but could not contain. Watching her, I smiled through the breath of the wind. I had spent endless ages guarding this forest, healing, giving, waiting, and now I saw the meaning of it all. The world does not end when kindness fades. It waits for mercy to take a new form, to find a new heart brave enough to offer what it does not have to give. Seasons turned once more. The hum of the earth grew steady again, balanced and whole. The circle was closing, not as punishment, but as promise. Proof that even when mercy is forgotten, it never truly dies. It simply sleeps, waiting to wake in the touch of a stranger's hand, in the offering of a single fruit, in the breath of a child's compassion. The old woman's strength returned. Her frail body straightened. She lifted her eyes to the canopy as if she felt the forest itself smiling upon her. The girl laughed softly, unaware that her small act had already woven her into a story far older than she could ever imagine. I felt my roots hum with pride, my leaves shivering in joy. The forest was whole again, not because of magic, but because a single heart had chosen mercy over fear. The light lingered, tender and gold, and through the whispering branches I let my voice move one last time, not as command, but as remembrance. I watched her disappear among the trees, her laughter fading like the echo of my own long-ago footsteps. The circle had turned, and mercy had found its new keeper. As the golden leaves fell gently around me, I whispered into the wind, words carried from the beginning to the end of all things. I was once a girl who picked fruit for a stranger, and became the queen who waits for mercy to bloom again. If this story touched your heart, then let it live beyond this screen. Share it with someone who still believes in kindness. Tell me in the comments, what does mercy mean to you? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that awaken the soul and remind us that even in darkness, compassion still blooms. Your voice keeps these tales alive. Stay, listen, and be part of the circle.